understand that you're worried. You're excited first and foremost about the season getting here. But then you're confused about what you saw in preseason week number 1, especially considering that it didn't necessarily co-align with the message that not just Brian Schottenheimer has been trying to convey, but everything that we've discussed here, unpacking this new regime and this new philosophy, if you will, organizational philosophy, one that's founded on physicality first and foremost. Once you get past the person behind the player, right? That's just as important in this equation too. But just from a actual on-field, in-game standpoint, physicality is the foundation. And that's what they've been trying to revolutionize. Jesse Holley, somebody that I have a lot of respect for, somebody who does a very good job with DLLS Cowboys, a very entertaining personality, a very outgoing personality, a very loud and honestly powerful personality. He and I have had a couple different interactions. So, one behind the scenes, one in person, maybe a couple behind the scenes. And then obviously on just amidst social media throughout the years, right? But I believe that level of respect that I have for him is also mutual. Okay, he is. I think that he feels the same about me. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. And he asked a very intuitive question, a very intelligent question, one that he was fair to ask, one that he was frustrated with as a result, like I said, like many of you were, watching week number 1. Why in the world? All this talk about physicality and changing of the culture, turning of a new leaf. What is Joe Milton doing starting the game throwing 6 passes? 6 pass attempts to begin the ball game. What happened to physicality? Why aren't most of your starters playing? Why is your first-round draft pick Tyler Booker sitting out? The only one of the able-bodied first-round draft picks who didn't participate in week 1. What the heck is going on? There's a logical explanation. The sky's not falling with the way that things shook out in the preseason, okay? Give Shotty a break. In particular, preseason week number 1 being just one piece of the puzzle. If you practice hard enough, which they are, they're answering a lot of their own questions behind the scenes. See, I get it. Everybody's excited. You expect greatness. It's the first live reps, live bullets on national television. You're craving football. You want to see everything go flawlessly. It's just not real life.
Or one part of the back end. But again, the preseason games are one part of the evaluation. Again, I've said it 1,000 times, we can get a lot out of practice. And if we practice the right way, which we do, we'll get a lot out of that. And so,
cut number 2, I believe it's the 14-minute mark.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, babe. I mean, literally, thinking back last couple of years with the AAR, what happens is if you do the AAR on Friday,
after action report,
your vets don't play. So Friday they kind of get it off. They don't play Saturday. The mandatory day off is Sunday. Today they come back in and you can't practice because the guys played in the game are sore and you wouldn't do that. So the next thing you know, you're 4 days of not doing anything. And I don't believe that that's the best way you get. It's too long. It's too long a period for these guys to not be playing football. How do you get good at football? You play football. And so the way we structured the practice schedules, the guys not playing in the game or limited in the game, they got 24 reps. And the guys that were going to play quite a bit in the game got 12 reps. And so I think that's very manageable. I think the guys worked hard. I challenged them to work hard. And
so there you go. Okay, hopefully you get that right there. I don't want to get a copyright strike and show too much of this. But yeah, so it's all calculated, okay? Now, for Stephen Jones. Now, if you want to be frustrated with something, be frustrated that it took this long for the Cowboys to try to create competition. There's a word for you. At the defensive tackle position. So then why would there be 6 straight pass attempts from Joe Milton to begin that ball game? Why would so many most, if not all, of your starters really sit out in that first performance? Why would your first round rookie not get any reps whose whole identity is built on that physicality? What are we doing and why? Okay, we're going to unpack that here. Jesse Holley did a really good job of bringing it to light, but this is something that the answer from Brian Schottenheimer clarified and confirmed the answers that you and I were discussing in the immediate and ensuing days after. So we have clarification. We were already on the right track. Jesse did a fantastic job doing his job, standing on business, pressing Brian Schottenheimer, and asking the question that not just he was asking and curious about, but that a lot of people were. And that's been the discussion.
Your openness, right? Your gift to gab, and you have that, and you've wowed a lot of people with the things that you've said. But as men, we always want to make sure the things that we're saying match the actions that we've want to put out there. And I think for me, I've said a couple times that you talked about being a running physical football team, and do these things. And sometimes you show situations where it's like hey, 6 passing plays in a row, and there's some things that I'm just like, all right, cool. I hear what you're saying, but sometimes it doesn't always show. Talk me through it. Like, put me in my place, or talk me through it of what you're saying, and then how was it implemented on the football field, and those pockets where you go, well, he said he was going to be a physical running team, and then he opens up with 6 passes, or he said going to be a physical football team. And I know today you kind of Marquise got thrown out one of a play, one play by you, because you were like, hey, he lowered his boom a little bit on Mingo.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, how does that all come together from what you say and then it matching up and lining up with the things that you do?
Well, I love the question, number one. And I will say this, the one thing I will always be with you and everybody, the fans, the players, I will always be authentic. I'm always going to tell you what I think and what I believe. Here's what I would say to you. We went into that game last week with a very specific purpose.
Okay.
We wanted to kind of put Joe out there and sling it around a little bit. That was the plan, and see how he handled it. And quite honestly, we started slow. We had limited opportunities. I wouldn't read too much into what you see in the preseason. The preseason is for evaluation. I don't have to go out there on the first preseason game or even this game against Baltimore, Atlanta, and run it 50 times to show that. I think I would go to my history.
Okay.
My history of coordinator in Seattle, led the league in rushing in 2018. Coordinator in 2008 in New York Jets, led the league in rushing. So again, I appreciate, love the question. The question's a fair question, but I wouldn't read too much into what you see in preseason football in general, but even more this year. Why? Well, we're trying to evaluate certain guys, and Joe Milton's a guy that needs to play a lot of football. He's going to play a lot of football this week and then the next week, and we're certainly being smart with what we show. And why would we do that? We would do that because this is the one chance that we'll ever have here in Dallas where we don't show people in the preseason what we're doing, because next year they're going to have a really good idea. They're going to have hopefully 20 plus games to look at and evaluate. This year they don't have that. Hey, are we going to be Seattle? I don't know. Are we going to be Arizona? I don't know.
This is the message, the underlying message of this hypocrisy that is in question here. Why would Brian Schottenheimer? Why would he empty the clip? Why would he just forecast to the entire National Football League one of the biggest, the most significant advantages that the Cowboys have going for them right now? Okay, the Joe Milton thing is separate, and there's an explanation for that we're going to get to. The Tyler Booker thing is separate, and there's an explanation for that we're going to get to. But I'm talking scheme and team here, as far as the players that are participating. We don't know who the Cowboys are, offensively or defensively, with this new personnel. We're going to focus on the offensive side of things because that's Brian Schottenheimer's. That's his cup of tea. Okay, offensive-minded head coach, play caller. We don't know who the Cowboys are with this version of Brian Schottenheimer as the play caller. We have information about who Brian Schottenheimer might like to be from his time as a play caller at a couple previous stops. But even so, we don't know who the Cowboys are because Brian Schottenheimer has never had full head coach autonomy. He's still always deferring to what the head coach wants in this previous stops of this who Brian Schottenheimer is as an offensive-minded play caller. Why would he give that up now? Why would he show you this nuance that we've been discussing at the line of scrimmage? With Dak under center a lot more. Dak getting on the move in the play action game a lot more as a result of being under center. Pistol looks in the running game. Motion looks at the snap in the running game, with the running game married to the pass. All this stuff went way up. And yes, historically speaking, the same was true under Mike McCarthy. We started to discuss more of the motion, more of the modern nuances of offense that we've been calling for. But Mike McCarthy ultimately deferred back to what was comfortable for him, for who he was, to his core. Old school guy, West Coast. Brian Schottenheimer is very much not that. And especially with Connor Riley alongside him, and especially with Clayton Adams. Okay, so this is what we want to consider here before we unpack and take it to the next step. Why would the Cowboys unleash and unveil who they truly are and give the Eagles, just in week one specifically, a tell, an advantage, just broadcasting to the world, hey, this is what we're going to try to do. Physicality, once again, this is a completely different, it's a semi-side topic. But it all kind of ties in together. There's calculated efforts monitoring the reps and the physicality because they're practicing so dang hard. That's first and foremost. That's what you got to understand, and that's what we're going to unpack and prove. But ask yourself the question, why would the Cowboys unveil who they truly are to their core as an offense, with Brian Schottenheimer as the head coach with the ultimate final say, unlike years past at his previous stops when he was just the offensive coordinator, not the head coach? Why would they unveil who they truly are before they have to? Watching week number 1, why in the world? All this talk about physicality and changing of the culture, turning of a new leaf. What is Joe Milton doing starting the game throwing 6 passes? 6 pass attempts to begin the ball game. What happened to physicality? Why aren't most of your starters playing? Why is your first-round draft pick Tyler Booker sitting out? The only one of the able-bodied first-round draft picks who didn't participate in week 1. What the heck is going on? There's a logical explanation for that. All right? Jesse Holley stood on business when he asked Brian Schottenheimer the question, which that's once again partially where the level of respect comes from. Because being a influential and powerful voice in media and on Twitter is one thing, but when you can actually take the same questions that you're asking and trying to convey on Twitter and then press the subject directly and ask him this question. Drewski would make fun of me just like he did Justin Bieber for saying business, by the way. I get that. But Jesse stood on business. So he pressed Shotty in the most, a very articulate, a very respectful Jesse Holley way. Hey, this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm feeling. A lot of the fans feel the same way. What can you say to this? And I thought his answer was interesting, and I loved it, especially considering it was what I tried to convey prior to that. So that my thoughts and my feelings were uploaded, and I've had a bunch of different people, positive feedback from a bunch of y'all and interactions behind the scenes too. You send me messages, be like, hey, I appreciate that. So thank y'all for that. But thanks as well to Jesse Holly for asking the question and getting Schottenheimer to clarify what we had already discussed and been pandering over here. So, in summary, the preseason is for evaluation. Okay, Joe Milton needs reps. Him handing the football off doesn't make him better at this current point of his career. His most significant shortcoming, which is processing what he's seeing post-snap and then delivering the football on time. Calculated. So Joe Milton needs reps. That's why they're trying to develop this player. Okay? Secondly, the Cowboys roster needs rest. They need to recover from the physicality of their practices. You ever hear the story about Sean Lee talking about how it hurt and sometimes he didn't want to get out of bed until the Tuesday or Wednesday after every single Sunday matchup? He's bedridden all day Monday because it hurts so dang bad. Tuesday, he can finally move a little bit. Wednesday, he's like, all right, I can think about playing football again. Thursday, a little bit of practice, get the body moving. Friday, it's like, okay, I'm not sore anymore. Here we go. And then Saturday, walk through, Sunday game again. All right. There's an acclimation period. There's a rest and rehabilitation period. There's recovery time. All this stuff by Catapult Sports, GPS tracking data and technology, they have it all mapped out. Who expended what, whose body recovered, top speed, the distance traveled, output exerted. All this stuff is calculated. Okay, so their bodies need rest. So far, that's two things. We've got Joe Milton needs reps. We've got the Cowboys roster needs rest. And number three, we've got the Cowboys need to keep who they are in their back pocket until they absolutely have to disclose that. The Eagles have no idea what to prepare for. That's an advantage. That's a win. We know who the Eagles are. All that stuff, they're the Super Bowl champions. Ain't nothing changing. Not much change with their personnel, offensively at least. Defensively, maybe a different story. Vic Fangio's got his work cut out. But the Cowboys defense knows exactly what to do or what to try to do to slow down this Eagles offense. The same cannot be said on behalf of Vic Fangio and the Eagles defense. They don't know who the Cowboys are. So we've got rest, we've got reps, and we've got keep that ace of spades in your back pocket. And it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. When we have a hunch around here, we're usually correct. And that's not to toot my own horn. It's just to say that I take serious pride in being the voice of reason, being objective, and then of creatively conveying the truth for the true fan. That's you. I'm overly analytical, sometimes to a fault, but I'm diving deep into not just what is being shown on the telecast, like I said, but studying, rewatching, learning when the All-22 film releases a day or two after. Studying, watching, learning, taking notes. I mean, my hat, the thing from inside my hat here, this was my note card today, but I'm constantly finding things. I keep my pen on me, and I'm taking notes all the time. Even if I don't have a notebook with me, I'll find something. Studying, listening, learning to what the coaches are saying. That's how we came to that conclusion before Jesse Holly did a fantastic job of asking the same question, clarifying what everybody was still wondering, right? I can say it, but that doesn't mean any... First of all, this platform isn't big enough for it to have enough of an impact and to quiet some of the noise. So that's where I need your help, is to continue doing your part to help me continue to grow. But shout out to Jesse Holly for, once again, great journalism. Credit to Brian Schottenheimer for handling that tough question like the professional speaker that he truly is. But the foundation of this offense, this roster, and him as a person, it's manifesting, and it's much deeper than just physicality. And we've really tried to unpack all of that. But I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on at least this one particular front here. As we get ready, one more sleep before preseason game number 2. You're going to see a lot more Tyler Booker. You're going to see a lot more of the starters. You're going to see Joe Milton continue to throw the football around to start the game. Maybe I'm sure Brian Schottenheimer would admit that they'd like to do a little bit better job getting him into a rhythm first. There's ways to go around it, right? It doesn't have to be 6 straight attempts. But just keep in mind that there's a method to the madness. All right, remember that prayer changes things and the war's already won. Talk to you guys soon.